Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is February 10th. On this day in 1990, the small community of Las Cruces, New Mexico, was rocked by a crime so brutal and so senseless that it is still talked about 35 years later. The Las Cruces bowling alley massacre wasn't just a robbery gone wrong. It was a cold-blooded attack that claimed 4 innocent lives, including 2 young children, and left 3 others critically wounded. Despite years of investigation, the 2 men responsible for this unimaginable act remain at large. Today, we're going to walk through the events of that tragic morning, the investigation that followed, and the many unanswered questions that still linger over this case. Let's get started. February 10th was a typical Saturday morning at Las Cruces Bowl, a family-run bowling alley in the heart of town. Inside, manager Stephanie Senac was getting things ready for the day, along with her 12-year-old daughter, Melissa Rapace, and Melissa's 13-year-old friend, Amy Hauser. Also there that morning was Ida Holguin, another employee, and cook Steve Turan, who had brought his 2 little daughters, 6-year-old Paula and 2-year-old Valerie, with him that day. It should have been just another normal morning in a place that was always filled with laughter and the sound of bowling balls crashing into pins and the happiness of a tight-knit community. But by 8:20 a.m., everything changed. 2 armed men entered the bowling alley through a side door. They forced Stephanie and Ida into the office at gunpoint and demanded access to the safe. After taking about $5,000, they did something that defied explanation. They rounded up everyone in the building, including the children. And then, in an act of pure cruelty, they shot each person multiple times, execution style. And if that wasn't enough, they set the office on fire before fleeing the scene, in an effort, investigators believe, to cover their tracks. What they left behind was a horrific crime scene full of smoke, devastation, and unimaginable pain. Somehow, in the middle of all of the horror, there were survivors. 12-year-old Melissa, despite being shot 5 times, managed to pull herself to the office phone and dial 911. Her call is one of the most haunting and heartbreaking in true crime history. She told the dispatcher, quote, "Please hurry. There's a fire and they shot us all," end quote. First responders arrived quickly, putting out the flames and rushing the survivors to the hospital. But for 4 victims, it was too late. 13-year-old Amy Hauser, the cook, Steve Turan, along with his 2 daughters, 6-year-old Paula Holguin, and her sister, 2-year-old Valerie Turan, all died. Melissa, her mother Stephanie, and Ida Holguin survived, but they were critically injured and left physically and emotionally scarred for life. The Las Cruces community was shattered. The sheer brutality of the crime, the fact that children were among the victims, and the seemingly random nature of the attack left people shaken and afraid. Vigils were held and residents came together in grief and anger, desperate for answers. But as days passed and the gunmen disappeared without a trace, a chilling reality set in. Would they ever be caught? The Las Cruces Police Department, with help from state and federal authorities, launched an immediate and intensive investigation. Melissa's 911 call gave detectives a crucial starting point. She was able to describe the 2 gunmen as 2 Hispanic males, 1 older and 1 younger, both speaking English. Composite sketches were drawn up based on her account, and roadblocks were set up in the area. But it was too late. The men had vanished. Detectives collected shell casings and ballistics evidence, confirming that the killers used a .22 caliber pistol and a 9mm handgun. But the biggest question was why? If this was just a robbery, why execute everyone in the office, including the children, including a 2-year-old who couldn't identify anybody? And why set a fire knowing that it wasn't strong enough to destroy all of the evidence? As days turned into months and then the months turned into years, rumors and theories began to swirl around Las Cruces. Some speculated that the massacre was a disguised hit, possibly linked to drugs or organized crime. Others suggested that it might have just been transient criminals robbing the bowling alley and killing to eliminate witnesses. Despite a $25,000 reward offered by the FBI, no viable leads surfaced, and the case went cold. Even at 12 years old, Melissa was unbelievably strong. She survived being shot 5 times, made the 911 call that saved the other survivors, and has since become a symbol of resilience. Years later, she reflected, quote, "I was given a second chance at life, and I want to use it to make sure no one forgets what happened that day." End quote. Ida Holguin, another survivor, has spoken about the impact of the attack on her life. She described the fear and the trauma she experienced, as well as the never-ending pain of having lost her friends and colleagues. The families of the victims have never stopped searching for answers. Amy Hauser's family in particular has called for more attention on this case. During an anniversary vigil, Amy's mother said, quote, "We want closure, but more importantly, we want justice," end quote. Though she survived the initial attack, sadly, Stephanie Senac died from complications from her injuries in 1999. On today, the 35th anniversary of the Las Cruces bowling alley massacre, the biggest question in this case remains why. If this was just a robbery, why kill the children? Was it personal? Were the gunmen trying to send some sort of message? Without answers, these questions continue to haunt the families and investigators to this day. But even after 35 years, law enforcement has not given up. Advances in forensic sciences, like DNA testing, have given investigators renewed hope that they might one day be able to identify the perpetrators. In a recent update, a Las Cruces police spokesperson said, quote, "We're not giving up. We owe it to the victims and their families to keep fighting for justice," end quote. Today, the Las Cruces bowling alley massacre remains unsolved, but the memories of the victims and the strength of the survivors continue to inspire a community who refuses to forget. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to join me tomorrow as we discuss another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!